Right, let's bring in Professor Uwaleke, who is the director of the Institute of Capital Market Studies at Nasarawa State University, KEFI, and president of the Capital Market Academics of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight.
Thank you.
Do we start from the home front? Is that where we should, focus our conversation tonight, or first look at the global impact this is already having?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's look at it from the global and narrow it down. Yeah. And I'm wondering, this Trump tariffs, is it even sustainable, really?
Well, of course, Donald Trump has given reasons why the tariffs were imposed. He thinks the world has been unfair in terms of tariffs, on goods originating from the U.S. And then he feels that, such should be reciprocated. And when his vice was also asked whether that, how long would this last? Okay, the vice didn't, that's talking about J.D. Vance. Yes, he didn't really give any specific answer. All that he said was, Americans, should, prepare for it. There, wouldn't be any, quick fix. But he also said that the government of the United States, also had plans to cushion the impact on the U.S. economy by way of, tax cuts, by way of also reducing the, cost of energy. But however you look at it, it's something that will not only impact even the U.S. economy, it's also going to have ripple effect, across the globe. We're even beginning to say it. Just as you read out, retaliatory measures are also beginning to be announced. The Prime Minister of Canada, McCartney, was also saying that they were also going to impose tariffs on U.S. cars coming into Canada. The President of France, Macron also said that they were going to do industry by industry. They were going to match the tariffs industry by industry, and even advising the European investors, not to invest, in the U.S. We've also seen what has, what China has done. In the case of China, the U.S. imposed 34%, tariff. Earlier on, they had done 20. Yeah. So that's cumulatively like 54. And that's why China is, very much concerned about it, and also saying they will retaliate. So we've seen when you have these retaliatory measures, there is a possibility that the globe, may slip into recession, a recession. Okay, when you have this, supply, disruptions and so on, global trade wars can, result in a recession, and that's why you found, you saw what happened, almost immediately. The global markets, tanked. You saw the equities market in the U.S., whether you're talking about the Standard & Poor's, the NASDAQ, they all fell. Okay, cross over to Europe, the FTSE, 100, that of the London. You have the France, CAC, the Germans, DAX, over to Asia, to the Nike of Japan, they all tanked. Okay, and even the dollar index that tracks the value of the dollar, in relation to 6 major world currencies also fell. So the dollar also fell. So when you look at all that, but again, in Europe, bond prices, try to rally. Yeah. Why they rally in bond price? Because of the expectation that in the future, the central banks might begin to cut rates, in order to avert the recession. And of course, when interest rates are low, bond prices, tend to rise. So these things, should be expected. As I said, there could appear to be justification for what Trump has done. He is saying, if you saw his recent, comments, that the operation is over and the patient, lived, and he is trying to say that whatever he's doing is to defend the economic independence of the U.S. to make America great.
Wealthy again. Not even great again, wealthy again. And he's been saying that, friends and foes alike have ripped America for too long.
Exactly.
And he's trying to reposition America. But then again, could it be counterproductive? Let's bring it home, Professor Uwaleke, because I know that you could speak on and on for this. And we're glad you're here to help us throw more light to it. there's a consensus when you listen to analysts and economists that have spoken not just in Nigeria, across the African continent on the impact of this on Africa. There seems to be a consensus that it's time for Africa to look in, to smell that coffee.
Absolutely.
But how realistic is it? Our productivity is low, manufacturing is low, we don't trade with each other, and look at the currency, look at the economy of Africa. So how realistic is it when we say look inwards?
Yes, there's a way, there's a sense you say this thing and you may say, okay, we shouldn't really panic, over it, especially we got 14% above, just slightly above the baseline. 10%.
Yeah.
Okay, so it may not be, real cost of oil. Again, when you look at it from the point of view of even the volume of trade, the exports we do to the US, what are we exporting to the US? In 2023, the volume of trade between Nigeria and the US in terms of we exported goods worth about $5.5 billion, out of which over $4.5 billion was oil. So what our export to US is substantially oil. The rest agric, sesame seeds, cashew nuts, rubber, and textiles, and all that. And they all the entire aggregate in 2023 didn't really amount to anything, substantial. Okay, so and that's the more reason that this issue of looking inwards, trying to do intra-trade, okay, makes a lot of sense to me. I also think that is also an opportunity for even the AU to maybe form a united front to even confront the situation, to see how much they can advocate
to
for
form
the renewal.
An economic front.
Yes, for the renewal of the AGOA. Okay, AGOA will soon expire by September. So it needs to be renewed. If it is not renewed, it will hit hard on many African countries, particularly these countries with very high tariff rates, like Lesotho. Okay, Lesotho is a small African country, landlocked country, and you're slamming 50% tariff.
But they are charging the US 97%.
Exactly. Yeah. So Trump is saying Lesotho is one of the worst offenders. Okay, just as Trump is saying China is one of, because China's one is 67%, against America's goods. So the point you have made is very valid. The fact that we should really, this is the time for us to look inwards, to also seek new friends. Okay, trade doesn't have to be to the west. We should also, some have said, look east, look south, China, India, Japan. We should try to... The
friend of my enemy can become my friend.
Exactly. We'll try to also reach out to them to see how we can also increase our trade volumes.
In the direction of BRICS.
Yes, in the direction of BRICS. It doesn't really have to be US. If you look at the capital importation reports we do, released by the National Bureau of Statistics, the bulk of what comes in here by way of foreign portfolio investment comes in from US and the UK all the time. But if you look at some countries with huge foreign direct investments, like India, Malaysia, the bulk of their investments, foreign direct investments, not portfolio, not hot money, come from Singapore, come from Netherlands, come from Mauritius. I'm saying we should also reach out to these countries. So diversification is the word. Again, this is also the time for us to protect our companies, our industries.
SMEs.
Yes. The Brazilian, president, Lula da Silva, in response to this, the tariff, also said that they are going to defend their workers. Okay, because however we look at it, I've said the volume of trade is small, but of course, companies that are involved in these exports will be affected. No doubt. And before you know it, they begin to cut costs. They begin to lose.
So in practical terms, because we don't have much time, we wish we could, spend all 1 hour to discuss this. How exactly can Nigeria cushion the effect of these tariffs in practical terms?
Yes.
What do we need to do?
Now, in practical terms, we should, borrow a leaf from what other countries are doing. Spain, for example, has announced a $14 billion aid, trade assistance, in response to this tariff. Of course, Spain is one of the European countries. European countries are facing 20%, tariff. Yeah. So Nigeria can also, have an aid fund, an intervention fund, to assist these, companies that are likely to be affected. We saw that, of course, Nigeria has done something similar in recent time, when the US announced the freeze.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. We set up a $200 million fund to cushion that effect. So that kind of thing can also happen now. This is the time for the government to go into talks with, particularly the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, to determine how best to make those those funds available.
And which direction?
Those interventions. So I think that is one critical thing we need to do. And of course, I also talked about the issue of reaching out, trying to see how we can also leverage. This is the time to strengthen AFTA, African Continental Free Trade Area. I remember only recently the Association of Alliance of Sahel States also imposed 0.5% tariff.
And ECOWAS is meeting to retaliate on that.
So as I'm saying, this is the time to strengthen.
Tariff fever.
Yes, this is the tariff season.
Yes, it's the word of the year.
Yes. So we need to strengthen after this time, so we can increase in intra.
But what does this, very quickly, what does this do to our projected income of 36.35 trillion naira? I mean, about 19 trillion of that is expected to come from oil.
Yes, no, of course, you see, ultimately it will drop GDP. In many countries, when you have these tariffs, okay, it tends to drop your size of your GDP. And the fact of the matter is that directly the impact may not be as high as the even indirect or broader impact. For example, if you have global inflation now as a result of this, what is likely to happen? You now find, for example, here, okay, because we import a lot of goods from the US, for example, we do imports, it will also feed into inflation. Inflation will begin to rise. Then the central bank will also begin to increase rates. So you go back to the same cycle. And if these things also affect oil price, okay, the supply disruptions and so on, if it affects oil price, what happens? Again, the economy tanks, and that will also now affect this our target $1 trillion economy.
The Trump factor. Well, Professor Uwaleke is Director, Institute of Capital Market Studies, Nasarawa State University, KEFI, as well as the President of the Capital Market Academics of Nigeria. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For your insights.
Thank you.